Imagine a society where emotions are not a private matter, but a regulated resource, like electricity or water. After several major crises, the state decided that uncontrolled feelings are too dangerous. That's how the emotion code appeared. A strict set of rules defining what a person is allowed to feel, for how long, and at what intensity. Every citizen wears a sensor bracelet. It doesn't read minds, but it constantly measures signs of emotion. Pulse, trembling, skin temperature, breathing rhythm, voice. An algorithm compares the data to the norm for your age, job, and health status. If the indicators go beyond the limits, the system treats it as a violation. For example, a sudden burst of anger in a public place is classified like minor disorderly conduct. Anxiety that lasts longer than the allowed time is considered psychological pollution because it affects others. At first glance, it works. The news shows fewer fights, roads have less aggression, schools see fewer meltdowns, people become polite and calm. But scientists quickly notice a side effect. Emotions are not only noise, they are a system of signal. Fear warns about danger. Anger shows that boundaries were crossed. Sadness helps the mind process loss. Joy reinforces useful experiences. When these signals are cut off by law, the organism begins to go deaf. So the authorities introduce limits. Each emotion gets a permitted amplitude and duration. Allowed joy, up to 60% intensity, no longer than 20 minutes in crowded spaces, so it doesn't provoke social instability. Allowed sadness, up to 40%, no longer than 1 day. After that, mandatory correction with medication. Even love becomes regulated. Excessive attachment is treated as a risk because people lose productivity, make irrational choices, and break discipline. A new profession appears, an emotion inspector. They don't punish immediately. First, they issue a warning and send you for recalibration. Recalibration is a course of exercises that trains a person to replace dangerous reactions with neutral ones. In the evening, the bracelet sends a report. Today, you exceeded the irritation norm by 12%. Recommendation: reduce contact with triggers. Additionally, 10 minutes of breathing by protocol. Over time, society changes more deeply. Language becomes dry because vivid words raise the emotional background. Cafe music turns flat and predictable, without sharp chords. Films remove scenes that trigger excessive reaction. Children learn not to cry, but to lower their indicators. They don't ask, "Does it hurt?" They ask, "What level am I at?" Emotion turns into a number. But the body doesn't like bans on natural processes. If an emotion is suppressed for too long, it doesn't disappear. It accumulates. Scientific reports record an increase in silent breakdowns when a person looks calm but suddenly faints, loses memory, or falls into a stupor. Others develop emotional phantom. The body reacts as if the person is afraid or angry, but they cannot name the reason. It's like an alarm screaming while the display stays blank. Then an underground movement appears. The living. They gather in places without sensors. Old basements, forests, abandoned subway tunnel. There, it's allowed to laugh loudly, cry without a timer, scream in anger, hug, fall in love, above the norm. For them, it isn't rebellion for chaos, it's an experiment, giving the body back its natural signal. They keep journals, draw, create music with sharp transition, anything that restores the feeling of "I am real." The most interesting part happens when scientists compare two groups, those who live strictly by the code and the living. The first group has fewer conflicts, but worse decision-making in unusual situations. They are perfectly tuned for a familiar world, yet get lost when the world changes. The second group argues more often, but notices danger faster, learns better, feels deeper empathy, and generates more new ideas. It turns out emotions are not the enemy of order. They are the fuel of adaptation. So the main question of such a world is simple. What do we want to preserve? Silence or humanity? Because when emotions are controlled by law, society becomes predictable. But the person becomes less alive. And sooner or later, the system meets a paradox. To keep emotions from destroying the world, you shouldn't ban them. You should learn how to handle them. Otherwise, you won't get calm. You'll only get an imitation of it. What do you think about this? Write your thoughts in the comments. Imagine this. You're the only one who can see what others don't. Not magic, but invisible processes that have always been around. Inside a room, the air suddenly looks alive. Near a heater, it rises in thin, transparent waves. Near a window, it sinks. From a cup of tea, a warm stream stretches upward, and around a human body there's a faint outline. Like the space, there is slightly denser. For everyone else, it's nothing. For you, it's like smoke that reveals motion. Outside, you notice something else. Around power lines and phones, there are thin lines that pulse, like threads. You realize these are fields that make technology work. They don't glow brightly. They simply show direction, like arrows in the wind. Then you start seeing people. When someone is anxious or lying, you don't read minds. You catch tiny signals, an extra breath, a pause before an answer, a micro-movement of the shoulder, tense fingers. For others, it's lost in the noise. For you, it forms a precise pattern. The strangest part appears at a crosswalk. You look ahead and see several semi-transparent paths of possible events. One is steady. You cross spokojna. Another trembles. Someone nearly crashes on a bike. A third is wider. Someone drops a phone, and you can pick it up. This isn't prophecy. It's more like a forecast, where probability is thicker, the event is closer. And here's the trap. The more you see, the more carefully you live. The world becomes safer, but less random. Fewer unexpected meetings, fewer what-if moments. You understand the main thing. You're not chosen. You simply received an overflow of data that other brains filter out to avoid overload. What do you think about this? Write your thoughts in the comments.